Greetings and welcome to a new video review series. I've been umming and ahhing, so to speak, to borrow a colloquial term, for a while about what possible other cigars could I do to bring to you. And it hacked my mind recently to possibly do some of the cigars that I'm less inclined to smoke from my humidor, and I have a number of Cohiba cigars that I guess if it wasn't for this video review series, they'd probably still be sitting in my humidor. But I'm delighted to bring them out, especially during these shared times that we're all going through with the coronavirus pandemic. I'm delighted to brought them out and do a video review series and discuss Cohiba in general. Today's cigar that I'm looking at is the Cohiba Siglo 3. It's a Coronas Grandes. It's a wonderful size. I love that size. It's 42 ring gauge by 155 millimeters, which is a bit over 6 inches long, 6.1/8 inch long. It was a more common size in the Habanos catalogue in the past, but we'll discuss why the size has practically disappeared and when it did. We'll discuss that later in this review. Cohiba in general, if you want some background, I'll bring it to you from Cuban Cigar website. So Trevor Lisk wrote this summary of Cohiba, and Alex Groom, the current proprietor of Cuban Cigar websites, updated it. Cohiba is a current post-revolution brand. It's considered the flagship brand of Cuban cigars and available worldwide at a premium price point. The brand originated in the early 1960s as a custom cigar privately rolled for Fidel Castro. In 1966, the brand was formally named Cohiba and produced in limited quantities at the El Guido factory for high officials in the Cuban government and for use as diplomatic gifts. It was released to the general public in 1984. So a few things to clarify there. Post-revolution brand means refers not to 1959 when the Cuban Revolution happened, but 1962 when the Cuban government centralized Cuban cigar industry and brought down, from the top of my head, it might have been 125 to 140 brands down to 25. And they're all controlled by the Cuban government, I think Cuba at the time? Cuba Tobacco. I think it's Cuba Tobacco. Anyway, the main thing is the Cuban government controlled Cuban cigar production from 1962 onwards. So that when we say post-revolution brand, that's what we're referring to. Cohiba was not available for the public for a long time. It was traditionally handed out as a diplomatic cigar to obviously diplomats. The tobacco, I'll read on further. Tobacco is the best available from the premium Vuelta Bayo region. The Seco and Ligero filler leaf is given exclusive third fermentation in wooden barrels. So what that means is that not all of Cuba grows tobacco or has tobacco fields. The very best Cuban tobacco is grown on the west side, south of Havana, but on the west side of the island. And when it comes to Cuba cigars, the Seco and Ligero leaf is given a third run through in its fermentation, whereas other cigars have a maximum of 2. I'll read on further. The classic and Bahiki range comprise medium to full strength cigars. And the Siglo Maduro range comprise medium strength cigars. The brand typically receives a new limited edition cigar every 2 years, an anniversary humidor every 5 years, and numerous releases in other categories. So I have gone ahead and lit this up. I can tell you the cold draw on this cigar was all beautiful refined hay, and a little bit of cedar, a deep cedar smell to it, because of the way it was stored. I got to acknowledge Trevor Leask. Trevor, thank you. Trevor gave me this cigar. I've got to acknowledge Trevor's just generosity with his time and knowledge, and just in gifting me these cigars, a number of which I'm going to smoke to you in this video review series, for me, and mentoring me to grow my knowledge of this wonderful hobby and to be able to share this information with you. I'm greatly indebted to you, Trevor. Thank you so much. Trevor did give me this cigar. A while back, and when I first lit it up, it had some beautiful refined hay, a creamy texture, and a vanilla bean quality to it, which I will discuss further, and I'm going to discuss a few other things further when I come back after I've smoked well into the middle third. So I've smoked down into the middle third, and some of the flavours that are synonymous with Cohiba, the flavours that I look for, 5 main flavours. First one is a mocha or a milk coffee, a lighter coffee flavour. Second one is a grassiness or a hay, a refined grassiness or hay. Third one is a honey sweetness. The fourth one is a citrus aspect, like a lemon citrus aspect. And the last one, which I don't get too much of too often, more in older Cohiba, and that is like a vanilla bean quality that can translate to a like a spice when you get quantity, quite a bit of it. I tend to find, I guess, I tend to find more of the, again, it's just a generalization, but I tend to find the mocha coffee element in more recent Cohiba, the last 2 or 3 years, and maybe that grass and hay, more in the older Cohiba that I've smoked. As I mentioned, well, I didn't mention before, but I'll mention it now. The Cohiba Siglo 3 is part of the Linear 1492 series. So that series compromises at the moment the Siglo 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that came out in the initial run when it was first announced in 1992. Then the Cohiba Siglo 6 came out in 2002. Announced in 2002, didn't come out until 2003. We'll talk more about that in another video review. And the recent 2016 Medio Siglo. Now, going off the numerous Siglo cigars or Linear 1492 cigars that I've smoked that have been older, they too lend themselves to a sort of a creamy texture as they get older, which I find very different to the Classica Linea, or the classic line, which is more Esplendidos, Lanceros, Robustos, Cohiba Coronas Especiales, those sort of cigars. That first line that Cohiba had in the 60s, and some that came out later in the 80s, such as the Robustos and I could be wrong here, I have to check, but I think the Exquidos or the Panatellas came out then. I know the Lanceros, the Esplendidos, and the Coronas Speciales came out in the 60s. Now, those cigars if you age them for a while. They tend to give off more of a buttery texture to them. I find that more often than not. But that's just for me. You may not find that for yourself, but they're the differences that I tend to find. This cigar, coming to Milk Herd, is very easy to retrohale. Now, I'm not the type to retrohale that often. Every now and then I like to retrohale. It has barely any spice through it, and it's just got a really, really um, refined quality to it. I guess because it's 14 years old. Still has that vanilla bean and creamy texture to it, refined grass. It's gone um, more intense in its grassiness, I suppose. The hay is a little bit more stronger, a little bit, just a touch spicy. Just quality, just really, really nice. Now, I did want to talk about the size of this cigar. It is my favourite um, size in the Siglo series. 42 ring gauge by 155 millimeters or 6 1/8 inch. And the reason is because I consider myself a traditionalist. I consider the 42 ring gauge as God's perfect size for a ring gauge. 2/3 of an inch, 42/64 of an inch ring gauge. That's what's called 42. If you do the maths, it becomes 2/3 of an inch. I consider that the perfect ring gauge. 6 1/8 inches long. Just right for me in terms of being long and skinny and where it's at. Just smokes really well. It always smokes well for me. Number 3 is just a cigar that more often than not I'll try to reach for out of all the Siglos. Now, I did mention before at the start of the review that the Coronas Grandis size, this 42 ring gauge by 155, was much more common. Today, only the Siglo 3 and the Monte Cristo Tubo is left. Now, why did these other ones disappear? And what brands were they? Well, apart from the Davidoff, the Dunhill brands that were discontinued in 1991, when those contractual agreements finished with Cuba Tobacco, they had a cigar in the Chateau series, a Chateau Mouton Rothschild for Davidoff, and a Davidoff 4000, and Dunhill Tubos in this size. But in the other regular production cigars, you had in the Hoya de Monterey, probably the most recent deletion, the La Jolla de Deux, which is greatly admired on our forum. That was discontinued in 2014. La Gloria Cubana Sabrosos, discontinued in 2002. The unvarnished 898, believe it or not. The varnished 898, which is still around, is a Dahlia, 43 ring gauge by 170, but you may not realise that the ones that came in the unvarnished box were Coronas Grandis sizes. That was discontinued in 2002. Partagas Coronas Grandis, discontinued in 2002. Punch Super Selection number 1, discontinued in 2009. Quidose Grand Corona, discontinued late 2006, but there was still some around for a while. And the Romeo Julieta Coronas Grandis, discontinued 2002. So a number of those discontinued around 2002. Why is this? The reason is in 2000, the Cuban government made a fateful decision faithful, I mean, in why cigars are larger ring gauge today. The reason is to get upfront money, upfront capital. They sold off 50% of the business, but they still control production and supply. They sold off 50% of the business to Altitas, which is a Spanish tobacco company at the time. Altitas did some fateful things. Number one, they rationalised production. Some of the poor sellers were discontinued over time in the early to late 2000s there. And they also brought out to raise more upfront capital. They brought out a limited edition series in 2000, 2001. It was highly successful, more successful than they thought it would be. And then later on a regional edition series, which meant that distributors were able to get a special order of cigars in different markets and pay for the cigars up front with the money that goes back into Cuban cigar production. And that happened from about 2005. All that meant was that cigars were streamlined, and basically larger ring gauge cigars came forth, and these skinny cigars started to disappear, which is a great shame. However, having said that, if that didn't happen, if we didn't have the upfront capital that we get from the sales of talismans, which are sold at a higher premium point, we're not going to have lower market cigars such as the Sancho Panza Bellicosos or the Vegas Urbana Famosos or Unicos, which don't sell anywhere near to a Montecristo number 4 or a Partagas number 4 or a Cohiba Robustas. So there's good and bad in all of this, but part of me feels glad that we still have this limited edition, regional edition series when they're successful. It allows Habanos to have upfront capital to continue making those cigars that you and I love, that don't get much market love out there, but they get good and enthusiastic responses from our enthusiast community. And I'm talking about cigars like the Rafael Gonzalez Pearls, for example. You buy a Rafael Gonzalez Pearls or a Petit Corona from a vendor, and you're going to probably get it 3 years old already because it's sitting on the shelf. But they're just great cigars. Anyway, I'm grateful that we still have the Montecristo Chubos and the Cohiba Siglo 3. And yeah, they're not going to go anywhere, because there's 2 brands that do not discontinue any of their Vitolas. It's Cohiba and Montecristo. The only Cohiba cigar that's been discontinued was the Coronas. That was a 42 by 142, 42 ring gauge by 142 millimeter cigar. Discontinued in 92, and only for the reason that the Siglo line, the linear 1492 line, the Siglo cigars, when they were first released or announced, that gave way because of its size. That's the only reason. Anyway, I'm going to pause the video there. I'm going to smoke a well into the final third and give my concluding thoughts. Well, we're into the final third, and just smoking like a dream, really. The ash, the rings on the ash is just perfect, pretty much. There's a slight coning to the ash that I always look for in quality cigars, and it's well into the last third year, but it's still smoking really, really well. Uh, yeah, it's certainly picked up in intensity in the grassiness, that's for sure. Um, a question that often comes up with cigars at this age: has it reached its expiry? Certainly not. Um, it's now this is 13 or 14 years old cigar, but no problem with flavors whatsoever. Um, in fact, Cuban cigars in general, um, they're not going to give you a grief in terms of flavors. 7 to 10 years is not a problem really. Um, it's certain cigars peak at certain times according to your palate, and you yourself will know from what you smoke what you prefer. But at the point where we're talking about the point where cigars become what we colloquially term newspaper, no, this Cuba cigar would have many years on it before it become like that. It's still every bit as wonderful through the nose as was in the middle third, and easy to retrohale, just to call it a cigar. Really, really glad to have smoked this cigar as the first cigar in the video review series. I don't smoke this enough. I'm sure that you're watching this video, you'd be the same, because the Cohiba Linear 1492, or those Siglo cigars, Cohiba in general, they're just more expensive than normal cigars. And an issue that I'll touch on lightly here, but I'll discuss further in the video review series, is the consistency of experience. How consistent are they? In terms of construction and flavour and for their value. It's a subjective question that often comes up on Friends of the Balance, and has been argued often. And it's a fair point, because if you're going to pay extra for it, you want to be satisfied that it's delivering you what you pay for. In this case, it certainly has delivered this 2006 Cohiba Siglo 3. And in my mind, I would certainly prefer it like this than some of the younger Cohiba Siglo 3 that I've had in the recent past. I think from memory that's 2018 quarter pack that I picked up, and I've only got 2 left. They smoke great. Don't get me wrong, I still don't mind young Cohiba, but in comparison to this, I would prefer it like this. Anyway, as usual, I've spoken longer than I've intended to. Look, I hope you've enjoyed this review. I've got a lot more to say about Cohiba in the next few reviews coming. Until next time, I bid you happy smoking. Bye for now.